Hey everybody, welcome back to the quest for the bestest from Backlog Banner. My name's Timo. I'm joined this week by Abram, Tucker, Tanner, and we are talking about Tom Jones. Add another teen name into the mix. It's from 1963, directed by Tony Richardson. It's a movie of sorts. Here, let me take my ceremonial headwear off and we can begin. An interesting movie, maybe? I don't really know quite what to think about it. I just finished it up recently, but before we talk about it, we gotta go over the doings, the goings-on of last week. Last week, we talked about Going My Way with Bing Crosby, and we decided that it was not the worst film. It went almost to the bottom, to number 24 out of 25, and so now, on our 26th episode, we have to decide where Tom Jones goes. What are your thoughts to begin it? There, I mean, this movie. I want to give my first wisecrack of the day.
Wisecrack.
This movie confirms to me that the meme of British people should be taken much more literally, as in the British entities that live over there are not people.
Mm-hmm. No. Yeah,
because I don't think
people
film
act like this.
called Tom Jones.
I wasn't even talking about the production of the movie. I was just talking about the way these freaking people in this movie act. I was like, oh my
we
God.
don't want to lose our UK audience. Come on now.
Okay.
Let's reel it back. Let's reel it back and just insult the film instead, because Tom Jones is quite the confounding film.
Ooh, good word.
Yeah, thank you. It opens in a surprising way. We talked about with the West Side Story. We were a little put off by the overture. This is much stranger than that. It opens up as a silent film. And
yes.
Abram, I know, was very confused if he was watching the wrong film. He messaged us and he's like, "Is Tom Jones a silent film from the 1960s?" No, it is not. But it opens as a silent film.
With intertitles and all sort of stuff. Yeah.
With the origins of our hero, Tom Jones.
Our hero as claimed by the narrator.
Yeah.
And I just have to say that I was not turned off by the opening. Honestly, I think it's one of the more creatively driven sections of the film. It has a unique tone because they're doing, modern cinematography with intercut with intertitles, and they're using the old style, ragtime music, whatever, to go behind it. And it actually feels like there's something behind it. It's a fun way to open the film. And I thought it was an interesting way to introduce the character. And I thought that it set the tone of this being sort of playful, sort of self-reflective, doesn't take itself very seriously. But that's not the film that we watched. That's the first 5 minutes that we watched.
Truly.
Abram, what are your thoughts going past the first 5 minutes here?
I've got two thoughts in my head right now. This is a bewildering win for Best Picture, first of all. But my other thing is, this is not especially strange, and it's interesting that we're watching this now because in one of my classes at college, I'm reading Jane Eyre. There is a whole cottage industry of incredibly long books from about this time period where there is a character in a rural setting who goes on this journey that unfolds and things happen just to happen, and they keep happening. And actually, Tom Jones was based on a book called Tom Jones from 17-something, which I looked up after, which is not surprising because characters show up, there's fight sequences. These things just happen because, well, we've got a couple hundred pages of book to write. And I just don't think that translates at all to a compelling Best Picture winner. I frankly don't know what the movie was about. I cannot remember anyone's name other than Tom Jones and Molly. And I was amused. So there's Sophie. I was amused by the film, but
so I saw a poster for this. I saw a poster for this film, and that inspires me to ask a question. The poster said that it was the greatest comedy of all time. Was this movie funny or not?
I think we laughed at it at its expense, but not its
we didn't
quality.
Laugh when it wanted us to laugh. We laughed at this movie existing generally and doing what it did, mostly uncomedically.
Yeah.
So we talked at least I talked in our review of You Can't Take It With You, that I could appreciate the comedy of the era, the style of comedy it was going for, but it didn't resonate with me.
Mhm.
I can't even really look back at Tom Jones and understand where the humor was supposed to be derived from. There's humorous situations like catching Molly with the fat guy who never appears again.
Oh, that
when
that
they're
was
having
pretty
sex.
funny. That was a pretty funny moment. the
It's
curtains
a
pulled
clever
back and the
moment,
guys
but-
just started like, It's a gag moment, but it's a really one-off thing.
Yeah, I don't know. There's like a whimsy. Is the whimsy supposed to be funny? I don't know. I didn't feel it.
I think it was going for like a raunchy sex comedy.
I
but
think that's what
made
it
in
is.
The 1960s, but made in the 1960s and taking place in the 1600s. So all the raunchy elements are not only bulldozed by the time period, but also bulldozed by the production norms of the time it was made.
Yeah.
So
One thing
I actually looked a little bit.
Oh.
So, sorry, Tucker, but to that point, actually, I looked a little bit into the response because this film has very mixed audience response. But there were some really positive critical reviews saying that it was a raunchy sex comedy that celebrates sex. And I don't see it. I think that this is definitely a film where there's a clear disconnect between the lens we view it through and probably what you were supposed to experience. But I think that speaks to the fact that, just like you were saying, it's out of time in terms of 60s and the 1600s. Like, we just don't connect to this film, and it's hard to see it for whatever merits it had at the time now.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I was going to say is I just wanted to set our expectations a little bit properly for what this movie was received like critically, because as we know, it won Best Picture, but it also won Adapted Screenplay, which, as we said, it was adapted from a book. It won Original Score, which I didn't have any complaints about the score. I don't really remember it.
I
But,
do have a complaint about this.
I'm going to complain about the score. So
okay, all right. Well, just let me get through this real quick.
Yeah.
Because there's something much more interesting than the score winning.
Oh, okay.
It won Best Director for Tony Richardson, which I'll comment on that in a little bit. But it was also nominated for Best Actor for Albert Finney, which, good job, whatever. Supporting Actor for Hugh Griffith, who was Squire Western, Sophie's father. And it was nominated for Supporting Actress for Joyce Redmond, Supporting Actress for Diane Salento, and Supporting Actress for Edith Evans.
So it got 3 supporting actors.
Did you catch what I said there?
Yeah, 3 of them.
5 actor nominees, 3 in one category.
I think
I was nervous that you were going to say cinematography. Yeah, that's what I was nervous about.
No. Well, also nominated for production design, which actually that was something that I think probably deserved a nomination.
Yeah,
I'm really glad that the interchangeable female for this all got nominated for Best Actress.
Yeah. Comments on the score?
Comments on the score.
We
it's
can get into it.
Harpsichord, I believe, is what
It's a
called.
full orchestra, but it's mainly a harpsichord.
And it sucks. It's grating on your eardrums. It drops in at the worst. It drops in at the worst times, and there's never a right time for it to drop in because it just sounds so like nails on a chalkboard.
Now that's
probably going for
Tanner's hating
thing.
on the harpsichord as an instrument. I think the harpsichord was played fine, and it was weird, but we're not really used to seeing the harpsichord. What I didn't like was the raunchy music played by the full orchestra. It just sounded so. There was times where there was a theme, a leitmotif in the score, where they would play. I can't even hum it right now, but it was so weird because it was like I know this is being performed by strings and woodwinds, but it's supposed to sound like that sleazy jazz wow, 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 and it was oh my god. I was every time it played I was that again. I don't want to hear that.
Stop. No, stop.
The one thing I was going to comment on the director, Tony Richardson, is he was very influential for this time period. He basically started what is called the British New Wave of the time, which was just a genre type of films from Britain in that time period. And this was the one that kind of started that off. I think he's done a couple earlier films, but this was one of the big early ones. So a lot of the things that it did in terms of what we're going to talk about with the editing and the cinematography, and there's a lot of experimentation with this film, and whether it hit for us or not, it was very influential, and it spawned a whole wave of films that sort of followed its style. So I think Best Director is probably in the time period made a lot of sense, but for us today, not being familiar with Tony Richardson, not necessarily enjoying the direction of the film, it might feel a little bit off place.
I think the film certainly had direction. We can give it that. It has a vision. It has a clear goal of what it wants to do. But that goal was maybe not the right one.
Sometimes experiments can go wrong.
Yeah, they did not find their hypotheses to be truthful in this experiment.
Well, what's interesting about the film's style is that it's so variable. There's like the sequence where the woman falls off the horse where the camera is going nuts. Or there's also the sequence when the two people at the end of the film are listening in through the door and it's cutting between still frames. There's a lot of strange one-off stylistic elements that perhaps they're influential, but they don't feel cohesive. I think there's a lack of cohesion throughout the film.
I agree. I think it has to do something with the fact that there's really no natural transitions in this. It's a lot of there's side wipes. There's a circle.
Oh, there's all kinds of great iMovie transitions in this. I enjoyed those just out of pure like, oh my god, they're really using it, and this film really won Best Picture.
But there's just, I don't recall any actual natural cuts to a different scene. I think they always had to do a wipe of some kind.
I think there were multiple wipes in scenes too at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's not naturally transitioning from scene to scene because we have a narrator telling us what's going to happen next, telling us what's going on in Tom's head. And I honestly think that contributes to the weird pacing of the whole thing and not feeling like it has a core structure because we're just listening to someone talk about a guy. We don't learn a lot about Tom Jones because he's kind of just this bumbling dip fuck in the background who's just having a lot of shit happen to him. And I really think that
he is active in one regard though. He is
sexually
in no uncertain terms a horny motherfucker and really likes to have sex.
Pardon my French, but a horny motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yes, that is very true.
Which is where all of the drama and I mean, we're talking about all these weird elements that we actually normally don't get to. We don't always talk about the score and really dive into editing and transitions. But we're talking about it here, I think, because I don't know what to say about the actual content of the film.
Yeah.
I mean, like the story was very weird to me. And it truly all over the place. I mean, everywhere. And with lots of characters, and it's got a second 45 minutes that are just like, or the last 45 minutes of it are just, there's new characters and they have new relationships, and it's like, I can't keep it straight because they all talk the same and they pretty much all look the same. And at that point, I was lost. And so I was like, roll my eyes back in the head and look for some weird camera gags, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's where those latter 45 minutes is where I started to, I was fighting the urge to doze off.
Yeah, he fell asleep twice, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't feel like I missed anything of substance in this film. So that's very telling, I feel.
Well, actually, that phrasing there of substance, I think why we're not connecting this film at all. Because not only is it disjointed in its story, not only does it do weird things like the transitions that feel a bit cheap, it does some experimental stuff and then click with us. But this film has -5 thematic material. There is no tone. There's no tone. There's no plot. There's no like thematic. There's nothing to grab onto. There's nothing to take with you from the film. The guy is just an idiot, and then conveniently at the end, he's actually a high class guy. The most convenient plot twist of all time. It's just shoved into our faces at the end, and it made it. I'm watching this movie at the end. I'm like, why do I care? Why would I watch it? There's nothing to grab onto here.
Yeah.
So to share my perspective as a self-loathing English major, this is clearly an instance of a much more engaging and introspective book being stripped to the bare minimum and being put on screen. Because a lot of the like tropes of finding old family members or working into a fortune are usually earned character moments after a life of, like Tom Jones has in the movie, of everything going wrong in a completely unbelievable and over the top way. But you don't see that. You can't really feel it because this movie is like 2 hours long, and we gotta move because we've got sword fights, we've got infidelity, we've got mistaken identity, we have all this stuff we have to cover that probably in, I don't know how long Tom Jones was, but in a book that was significantly longer and had time for these characters to sit and develop relationships, there probably was something there. But as a lot of adaptations go, there's only so much you can carry over in a reasonable length of time, which just makes this hard. It makes the film inaccessible, I think.
Remember when he joined the military for like 15 minutes?
You slept through a hearty portion of that one.
Oh, well.
No, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot of things that just feel like one-offs and don't really play into the larger story. You're right. The family reunion, he meets the guy who was his dad, and he's like, "Dad!" And then like a bit character, a side character.
Well, then it's revealed that he's not his dad, but it's not super clear.
But no, I think it's his actually. Or you're right. Yeah, it's his mom was the sister. His mom was the sister of the guy who raised him, and his villainous sort of rival stepbrother. He's kind of adopted, and then his mom was abandoned, but then he comes back at the end, and he sleeps with her in a bed, and they might have had sex. I don't know. But then there's a whole web here that just is not properly laid out.
It's just I think it's truly too complicated to lay out in a movie. I think Abrams' point is very clear and strong in that this film is too short and too long. It's too short to tell the story, and it's too long for my enjoyment.
Shit.
To use a word
that's rare.
I'd like to talk about something that I did like about this film, but
Okay.
but I'll get to that in just a second. Because this interconnected web of romances and connections is something that's common among media that takes place in this, to use a word that our roommate used, Jennifer Prue, shout out, the Regency era. You get your Pride and Prejudices, you get your Jane Eyres, you got all that kind of stuff.
More recently, Bridgerton on Netflix, I think, is doing that.
But this is going for like a raunchy sex comedy thing, so none of that matters because that's all about like unrequited, like you're stopped by the social norms of the time. This doesn't use any of that.
Well, that's not true. The story of this film is his forbidden love with Sophie. He's a horny motherfucker, but he's a horny motherfucker with a heart.
I guess that's true.
He has a love for this girl who is in a different class than him, and no one will let him be with her. That's the plot of the movie. We haven't even brought that up, but this is a romance movie with the core of him wanting to be with this girl, and he goes out and he chases her.
I thought he couldn't be with Sophie because they were like related.
No. What? No, because he's like lower class. Because he's a bastard child. That's why he's not allowed to be with her.
Wow.
But then it turns out he's not. So they happy ending.
That was not made clear.
I want to draw a comparison to now that we fixed Godfather Part 2, the other enormous snub on our list being Shakespeare in Love. Because I think there's a lot of Shakespeare DNA in this film, because really what it is sort of like Shakespeare's body, sex, humor, B-plot that's sprinkled throughout a lot of his texts, but foregrounded as Tom Jones. There's a lot of I got a lot of notes of Shakespeare for mostly worse here, but I think there is like Tucker said, there is this sort of unrequited love, but it doesn't really matter. It's really circumspect to the entire thing. So I just think the movie's confused. I was confused, and I don't really want to say anything else about the plot because I can't, or I'd be lying because I'd be making things up. He almost died. He almost got hung.
That's true. Yeah, that's supposed to be like a really emotional moment. You're seeing this.
I don't know if there's
followed the entire time. He almost died. He's on the gallows, and then they come in and save him.
Tanner, you were going to say about something that you liked, and I want to hear because I do have something that I liked about this movie too.
Okay. I do like how this film portrays just the grossness, the griminess of the era.
Oh.
There's a thing at the beginning where it's just a bunch of old, disgusting British dudes just like chowing down on some like brown and gray miscellaneous meat. And there's various scenes where like people, I think there's a scene when they're about to go on the hunt, which is shot terribly, by the way.
We'll talk about the hunt. I'm going to disagree that it's shot terribly because I love that scene. Maybe not for its merits, but
because the camera's all shaky and it's too dark, but that's besides the point. Because there's just people rolling around in mud and horses are knocking people over, and they go on the hunt, and the camera like holds on like this deer that they slaughtered, and there's blood coming out of its mouth, and like hey, and it's getting all over them. And I think the scene that probably does it the most memorably is in that sexually charged scene, I guess, with Tom and maybe Sophie. I don't know. One of the
No,
female
it's with his not mother, right? The one at
Yeah.
the
his
inn.
not mother.
Yeah.
His
When they're
not mother, who he thought was his mother, and they slept together.
when they're just like chowing down on food and it's getting over their mouth and they're dropping it on the table. I think this film did a good job of showing how disgusting the era was.
I sent out a request for everyone to bring a pair. I don't think any of us did because I
Yeah.
want to do a
We
little
have
bit of
pairs- we
prop
have-
comedy.
We have pears downstairs. I can go grab one.
We did buy pairs, yeah. But I think that scene's probably the most memorable
I think
part
so.
of the movie. Not necessarily because it's great, but just because like what the hell am I watching? Why is this happening? But I mean, it is funny in that way, and I think it's the one thing I'm going to take away from this movie when I think about Tom Jones. Like, oh yeah, the scene where they just slurped everything onto their faces.
They have a really
yeah.
suggestive meal.
Yeah.
Well, here's what
very-
you're forgetting. This film is so overstuffed that Tom Jones stops a rape with just a branch. He fights a military
Oh, yeah.
branch to stop a rape in the middle of a field, and we've forgotten about it. There's
Yeah,
so
you're
much
right.
to this movie.
There's so much and so little in
Yeah.
a lot of ways.
The thing that I really liked, besides I really liked that chase scene just by how it was so long, the chase scene, the hunt. It was so long and it was so like it was intense for a lack of a better word, really. And I thought just how like over the top that's the way it was shot. Like it had to be a conscious choice just to shoot it like super shaky, very zoomed in from a car, I guess, following the horse, and just like with the
we were trying to figure out how they even did that, like keeping up with the horses and like going on this crazy terrain, and camera was steady, was watching them. I'm like,
it was up above them as well. Yeah.
So I think it was a mixture of helicopter and probably a process truck. They had those back in the 60s.
well, I don't think it was helicopter, because you would have seen the blades of grass going, like everyone's shit would have been going crazy. with helicopter
well, you
blades
use a
back
big long lens on a helicopter, and that's not a problem.
I guess that's true.
Because you can put it far away. But like that was a conscious choice, and like the shot, the super close-ups of them like beating the horses till they were bleeding, just like really characterized, I think, like you said earlier, characterized the era and like set the stage for this like gross and grimy. And then it also characterized my favorite character in the film, which was the hunts guy, the groundkeeper dude, the sort of father of Tom Jones.
Yes, the one that he thought was his father.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Who
I love
What
that
did he
guy.
do?
He was just like the way he acted and was like he was always yelling at something, and he was always running after something. I thought that was a delightful character to watch just because of how like ludicrous it is.
Was he the shitty robber?
No.
Yes,
Oh.
yes, he was. There was a guy who tried to rob the stagecoach or whatever.
No,
and he just
no,
did
no.
a terrible job.
Not that guy, the games keeper. The dude who was always talking about going on the hunts.
That's Sophie's dad.
Oh, so yeah, you're right. So Sophie's dad. I loved him.
Who was
because-
nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Oh, okay.
Hugh Griffith.
I like the shitty robbers are always fun in any movie.
Yeah, that was funny.
But I think my thesis on this film is going to be 3 words. 4 words, excuse me. It's going to be watch Barry Lyndon instead. Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon. Just watch that. It's set in the same era. It's about this. It's the life story of this one guy. It's much more interesting. Has most of the elements and does them infinitely better.
I'm sure that's true. I haven't seen that movie personally,
Yeah.
but there's actually, I think I'm a little bit higher up on the cinematography than you guys are. I know you've all been complaining about it, but I think the experimentality of it actually does give it a unique charm. Even if it's not consistent throughout, I think the fact that they try those freeze frames, they do really intense intercutting. They have one sword fight sequence that's like under a bridge where they're tracking back and forth behind these pillars. I'm like, that's so cool. The choreography works so well. But there are moments, I think, where the cinematography really shines. And I, in those moments, really liked it, where on the whole it was kind of, just disjointed and jarring. But I think there certainly are moments that do deserve praise and are part of the reason why this film, I think, was so influential.
I like the cinematography too.
film-
I just want to throw that out there. I thought it was interesting, and it never really, even though it was disjointed and kind of weird at times, it didn't take away from the storytelling to me. Even if it didn't really add a huge amount, I still thought there were interesting and cool shots.
Sure.
My problem with the cinematography is that it felt jarring when it would change styles and it would take me out of the experience. For me, I think really successful cinematography is visually interesting and has like an artistic thrust behind it, but it doesn't take me out of what the film is trying to tell me. It instead enhances a feeling, a certain element of the composition. But instead, I was just constantly spooked, I suppose, by the fact that we would have still shots. Sometimes we would transition into this Jason Bourne like shaky cam at certain sequences. I just think that the lack of cohesion ends up taking away more from the film than it gains. You know, if it's a sort of experimental thing, let's throw it out, and that gets adopted by other people in, what you say, British New Wave cinema.
Yeah.
Then sure, but I think by its own merits, it detracts from what Tom Jones is trying to accomplish.
Sure.
Well,
Anything else we want to bring up?
I don't know. I don't have a whole lot more to talk.
Or actually, let's shit on this movie even in a greater degree. Is title character Tom Jones? He's such a flat character. He's one note, no personality, no real character arc. He's kind of just an asshole to most people, but he's also kind of charming in some ways all the way throughout. And there's just no changes. And as Abram said, shit just happens to him. He's just not an interesting character to follow. And that's the whole push of our movie, is following this guy's entire life. Anything else to say about that? I don't know.
I mean,
the sequence.
I'm scouring my notes for any funny jokes I might have made, so just give me a second.
Okay, while you guys are thinking, send me your votes, and we can.
True. Abram, finish up what you were saying.
Tabulate.
The sequence that really feels emblematic of how Tom Jones is just a bizarre character and everyone around him is equally bizarre is when he brings Sophie a bird, and then the other guy, who I can't remember the name of for the life of me, just lets it go. And Tom Jones climbs up a tree. He just climbs up the tree and rescues the bird and falls into a lake with the bird in his hand. Like,
and then it's a freeze frame on him being all muddy and stuff.
I never know how to read his character. I never really know how to read anything of the film. It's just a bunch of images and sounds. It's like Transformers 5.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a. I would argue. Really hope we never make that comparison again on the show.
I would argue that Transformers 5 might be more memorable than Tom Jones.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, when we review Best Picture winner Transformers 5.
Yeah, Transformers: The Last Night, starring Mark Wahlberg.
Okay, I have a number for us. We've gotten a votes. We are continuing to stay down in the latter numbers, in the later numbers.
Yeah.
We did not get one vote above 20. We did not get one vote above 22. Actually, Abram put it highest at 22. We had 2 votes for 24 from me and Tucker, and 1 final vote for 26 from Tanner. So that all averages out really nicely to 24th place.
Okay.
I guess, yeah, it does. It perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Yep. So thoughts about that? I can lead off and say that even though this film is weird and has a lot of interesting stuff, I think I could get enjoyment from A, making fun of it, and B, seeing this weird stuff that it does, and just this, it's kind of novel. It's a little bit, it's certainly more novel than Going My Way was. And so,
yeah,
Devin, in my ranking, gets to go above that. Just even though it's weird, it's not necessarily boring in my mind, because there's always something happening, even if it's unconsequential and, completely out of left field.
Mm-hmm.
Not a great bar to set.
Other thoughts?
There's always something happening.
Abram, you had it up at 22. What was your thinking on that?
Well, my thinking was that I certainly found it less monotonous than starting with Out of Africa and working my way down. I think that experimentation, the pace are bizarre, but they keep you intrigued. And here's how I think of it. I was in Times Square one time at night in New York, and there's a guy with an enormous snake, and I was alarmed and confused, and I didn't want him to bring a snake near me, and I didn't know why the snake was there. But I'll always remember where the snake was. It was a bizarre moment, and I feel the same way about Tom Jones. I'll always remember watching it and how peculiar it is, and I'll never understand why it won Best Picture. But on the back of his experimentation, on the back of I think pretty good production design, on the back of I think some compelling elements, I didn't feel like I needed to stop the movie. I watched this one in one sitting, which I don't always do with the films below it. I think it held my attention better than certainly Out of Africa and certainly Going My Way and certainly The Great Ziegfeld.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me sad that From Age of Eternity is down there with all those because that's such a
Wow.
better movie than every single one of these.
Mm.
No, but I'm on the exact same page as Timo. I think the fact that this film does clearly have an artistic vision, it does things that are experimental, that are influential. It's just so much more interesting than Going My Way. Like Going My Way was just a generic comedy from the time that happened to have Bing Crosby in it, and it wasn't that special because of that. Like this is a more memorable film, and I think I can see more than Going My Way why it won Best Picture because of the things that I mentioned, because of its influence, because of its experimentation. And then The Great Ziegfeld is down at the bottom.
Well, see, what's interesting about what you just said, Tucker, is that you're wrong. It's not more memorable. Yeah, it's not more memorable. It is the least memorable one that I've watched.
Slept through 20 minutes of it.
Exactly. It wasn't. I didn't sleep through any of the other ones, even though we watched them at roughly the same time of day. So that tells me something about myself. And the fact that well, not myself and this movie, I should have said. And the fact that I can basically be half awake through about 20 minutes of this and not miss anything that I felt would have swayed me or improved the film in any way, shape, or form, even in a minuscule grain of sand amount of improvement, tells me that this is probably the worst one we've watched thus far.
Well, there you have it.
We all have very reasonable perspectives on this.
Yep, and so I think it is reasonable that we just go with our straight average, go with our votes. It's nice and clean, as this movie is not. And so that brings us to time to visit the spin wheel. Now this week we have a little bit of a difference because the Oscars are coming up. So I've prepared a spin wheel for us to take a look at what we're going to be watching next week. So let's take a spin. Here we go.
Oh wow!
There it goes around and around and around. I really wonder what we're going to get.
I made a promise that I wouldn't sing the wheel song during this one, so I'm going to hold to that.
Oh wow, we got number one.
What do you know?
First, I'm just going to kind of explain is what we're doing from now on for the next 8 weeks is, or no, 4 weeks,
5
I guess.
weeks.
5, God, whatever. 5 weeks. We're reviewing the Best Picture nominees for the 2021 Oscars. The nominees came out this morning, which kind of places where we record these things, but we have chosen our order of how we want to watch them roughly. And that number 1 stands for Sound of Metal.
No,
Judas
it doesn't. It stands for
No,
Judas and the
God
Black
damn it.
Messiah.
You really fucked that one up.
Yeah.
The whole lead up into it.
We talked for literally 15 minutes before we started recording about what order to announce these in.
Well, I was playing with my hair.
Folks, it's Judas and the Black Messiah. And
We'll be
Tucker,
back next week to talk about Judas and the Black Messiah. It's a separate list. It's kind of just a little break from the quest for the bestest. We're just going to try to figure out what the best picture is. And then I hope when the best picture winner is revealed, we will have to have a discussion about where it goes on the main list.
Very true.
Of course,
very true.
And so
To be fair for the audience, the show is basically exactly the same, but only we're just watching 2021 nominees.
Yeah.
So you're going to get the same thing. You're actually going to get more content. We're recording 2 of these a week.
Mm-hmm.
that
We
is
got to
right.
get them in for the April 25th Oscars.
Yep. So I hope you join us for that. That's going to be really fun. Get a look at the new movies. Figure out what you missed from last 6-8 months of highbrow films. I would say they're pretty highbrow this year.
We've had some lower brows recently.
The random number wheel has sort of failed us, and so we've taken it into our own hands and are going to just choose for the next 4 weeks or so, and then we'll be back with whatever the wheel does give us for when we eventually return to our traditional quest programming. So I thank you guys for joining me. That was fun, even if the movie was something else. Recommended? Yes, no? That's our final question.
No way.
Nope. Watch
No.
Barry Lyndon instead.
Watch Barry Lyndon instead.
Watch Barry Lyndon instead. That's the tagline for this episode.
Yeah.
The four line word tagline. So we'll be back next week with Judas and the Black Messiah. See you then. Peace. That's the filmmaking way, is push decisions as
maybe we
long
should
as
all
possible.
Look, let's just do this for a little while. Let's pull it back for a bit. See what happens. Ooh, look at that. That's a look.
Tucker is like the Ezra Miller Flash version of Dr. Wily.
Uh-huh.
You need to do a lot of legwork to understand that.
Yeah,
It's not even that funny when you do.
We should figure out what movie we're going to watch next for the 2020 edition, and it's Judas and the Black Messiah.
Stands for Sound of Metal.